thank you so much. I am actually very much delighted to welcome the participant to this special event on humanitarian coordination as part of the World Water Week for 2021, together also with my colleague from UNICEF, Marichel Rilano, who's the Deputy Director for EMOPS. And my role, I am the Acting Director for OCHA Coordination Division here in Geneva. And as part of our support, we also support humanitarian coordination structures, both at global and country level. And I want to start first by just putting things into context, because as many of you are aware, we have a global humanitarian response plan that we have asked for around 36 billion US dollars to support people in need in 2021. And the plan is currently around 31 funded, but within that plan, we also have a cluster or a sector that is also focusing on providing support to people affected by crisis to safe drinking water, hygiene, and sanitation. And compared to this 30% level of funding for the water, hygiene, and sanitation cluster or sector, it is only around 9 or 10% funded. And also we are talking about 120 million people who are in need of assistance when it comes to water, hygiene, and sanitation. So you see this also large number of people who are in need. And also you see that we are also have a challenge of not having adequate resources to address these needs, which makes coordination very, very important, both to make sure that we do the best with the coordination with the available resources, but also to be able to mobilize additional support and support the people. And also, as we know, water, hygiene, and sanitation by themselves are very critical needs, but they're also very critical to the health of people, to the nutrition of children. And having that said, I would like just to flag 3 points with regard to humanitarian coordination and water, hygiene, and sanitation sector. And I'll talk very briefly about localization. I will talk about the role of the cluster itself, and I will talk briefly about intercluster coordination. So starting from localization, I think it's very important, especially if we're in an environment where we have limited resources, that we make sure that all the actors coming together, whether starting by national actors, whether they're government or non-governmental actors, and the international actors from the United Nations or the international non-governmental NGOs, that we really have effective coordination. And the local actors are at the center of this. And I would say almost at all times, the first responders in crisis are the local actors, are the people themselves. And I think that's why very, very important they have to be at the center and at the heart, both in terms of the coordination, both in terms of also having more access to resources to support the response. And many of the colleagues here in this forum might be following the Grand Bargain, which is the framework by a number of signatories across member states, UN, and non-governmental organizations, including local actors, to improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of our humanitarian response. And localization is part and parcel of that Grand Bargain too. And as we say, we need to make the humanitarian action as local as possible and as international as necessary. And I know we still have a lot of work to do with regard to improving our work on localization. And I want to thank our colleagues from UNICEF because they have also supported the Interagency Standing Committee, where we have guidance to improve and strengthen participation, representation, and leadership of local and national actors. So it was produced in English, but with the support of UNICEF, it was translated to Arabic, Spanish, and French. And I think this was also help us to engage with a large number of actors about the guidance and how do you roll it out and how it can work effectively. The second point that I want to talk about is about the role of the clusters. And also I would like to flag that the WASH cluster, when they are doing the roadmap for their vision, what to do and how to support the coordination and the response, they have actually expanded their engagement with actors beyond the WASH cluster. And they had an inclusive roadmap because, you know, while they were coordinating with WASH actors, they work with quite a large number of actors that can also support the work in terms of advocacy and response. So I think that was an excellent example. And also, we know that UNICEF is leading the water, hygiene, and sanitation, but also education, nutrition, and also what we call an area of responsibility, child protection, under the protection cluster. And I think also one important role for the clusters have been to support the coordination structures by giving them policy guidance, normative, helping the different clusters to exchange good practices. And I think so that whole role in terms of supporting the response, I think is very important. I think my colleague in the introduction spoke about surge. Also the clusters, I think one of key role is that to provide also the human resources required. And I spent 3 months in the beginning of this year supporting the response in Ethiopia. And I think the WASH cluster has been one of the first to deploy a dedicated cluster. And that has made a big difference in the response. I would also like to flag that we have done this interagency standing committee coordination mapping to look at the gaps, and the water hygiene and sanitation cluster has really also had a higher average in terms of having capacity of coordination on the ground. So for WASH, it is 64% in terms of the presence of dedicated WASH capacity compared to the 60 average, and also it had a higher capacity in terms of information management capacities and analysis. And I think these are areas that we have also to improve overall, and particularly the issue of analysis. And also I would like to acknowledge that also the cluster, now they have UNICEF, they announced this CLARE 2, which is an evaluation to the work of UNICEF as a cluster lead agency. And I think it's very important that this initiative is there to look at what's working well, what needs to improve. And I think this will benefit all the clusters, not only the clusters led by UNICEF. I'll just conclude by talking also about, it's very important that in coordination that we are now looking at inter-cluster coordination. This is chaired by OCHA, facilitated by OCHA, but it is in collaboration, working with all the different clusters. And at the heart of this is that we are also shifting together to put people at the center of the response, including from how we analyze need. And I think many of you would be aware about this framework that is joint intersectoral or analysis framework that we look at the needs, how the different factors are impacting on the needs of the people at different levels. So there is an excellent also collaboration on that regard, and also having an integrated response to address the needs of the people. Maybe I'll stop here, but before I would just conclude, it's really been a pleasure for me to invite you for these very important discussions and very important events. I would also like to warmly thank the conveners of the event, the Global WASH Cluster, ACF, Solidarities International, and the French Water Partnership for really organizing this event and for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. And I really look for constructive discussion so that we can continue our efforts together. And thank you so much. Thank you.